Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our session today. I see 9:30 on my clock, and hopefully you are excited and ready to be here with all of us today to talk about literacy for leaders in our next webinar series. Today we are going to talk through oral language and phonemic awareness. And you'll see a QR code on the front page right there. If you want to grab that, that'll take you to our Padlet that has all of the resources. Each session will have one column, so last session's is already up there, and then today's resources are there for you as well. We wanted to thank you guys for being here with us. All right. I get the privilege of introducing my colleagues here with me today. We have Kelly Pratt. She is our early education consultant from the West region. Thanks for being here, Kelly. She's going to be manning the links and all the back work. Candace Heath is our early education consultant from the Southwest region. She'll be sharing her screen. And if you hear me talking to her, we're working together on this one. And then it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Donna Albaugh. She is our early education consultant from the Sandhills region, and she is my co-host for today. So you'll be hearing a lot from Dr. Albaugh and myself. And I'm Angela Preston, your early education consultant from the Southwest region. So we're very excited to have you all here with us today. We are going to talk through the bit.ly. So the bit.ly link, which takes you to the Padlet. So this Padlet page shows that we have the video from last time up on our Padlet. You can see what it looks like in the center. If you're not sure that you're in the right spot, that's where it should take you. And then today we also have our note catcher tool. You should be able to make a copy of it, or it should already automatically make you do a copy. And you can take notes in this as we're talking. We're going to use the same type of note catcher throughout our webinar series, just to make it easier for you to keep track of your thoughts and your next steps and kind of help planning as you're going along. All right, so where are we on our map? We have finished the overview. So today we are going to talk through phonological awareness and oral language. Our next sessions are going to be happening the rest of this year through March. We are honored to have a guest speaker. So once she is here, she is fitting us in because she is a very busy district leader. And so once she's here, we'll have her do a little talk and a welcome and just kind of share some of her perspective. And then we're really going to follow that same process where we talk about evidence-based practices, effective implementation, and really putting it all together in our enabling context and the environment in which we're doing this. Okay, so let's see if our guest speaker is here. And I see my friend Anna. She has just joined us. I'm so excited that you're here, Anna. Thank you. We're going to let Anna speak to us and really give some words about her story, what they've done in their district, and their journey that they're taking with oral language and phonemic awareness.
I'm excited to be here and excited to share what Stokes County Schools' journey has been. Just a little bit of background on Stokes County Schools. We are a small rural county in northwestern Piedmont area. We do have 11 elementary schools, but most of them are community-based small schools. The largest school does have around 470 kids, but the smallest school has 100. And that's around the majority of our schools. They fall between 150 to 200 kids. So we have 4 instructional coaches and 2 APs that do that 50-50 admin coach position. So there's not any layers between me and the schools, the principals, the teachers. Pretty much if we have any needs, they share those needs with us. And so when we saw that there was a gap in understanding for administrators or coaches in understanding any type of the literacy or any content, we try to immediately do what we can to support them. So a couple of years ago, prior to science reading and letters training began for our state, we had about 3 cohorts go through the Hill Center and start the journey with PHA, oral language, phonics, the science of reading, structured literacy, and that got our ball rolling and understanding that we're missing something. We're missing something. We had foundations, but we knew that that didn't cover the PA side of things. And so we adopted an additional program called Heggerty to cover that pivotal concept of what our students weren't getting. I mean, we had reading research to classroom practice in our county, and we understood that that was important, but we didn't really know how to implement it. So we adopted Heggerty in the middle of COVID, and which was quite an experience to learn a whole new program about sounds when you have to wear a mask or you're virtual. So that was an entertaining little piece, but no teachers complained because they saw that this was huge. And so as we began our journey with letters, it solidified this is the right thing to do. What we're doing for kids is the right piece, and helping them understand phonemes and syllables and syllable types and the progression of. We had been doing dibbles for years prior to it being reinstated last year, and the teachers were doing PSF, but we didn't always understand and NWF and all those types of things, but we really didn't understand all of those connections and what all of those things mean. So we the teachers started grasping a hold of it as we started with letters, and then we moved into principals doing the letters for admin. And so the principals did not feel like they were getting enough with letters for admin. So we got with Mary Durfel, which is our literacy consultant in the Piedmont region, and she and Cameron Ellerman came and started doing sessions with the principals to reinforce what should they be seeing in the classroom? What should they be looking for? They used the PLC resources from that our Office of Early Learning had created. The look fors. We also had a Heggerty walkthrough. So the principals got more information in their toolbox, so they knew how to have conversations in PLCs or conversations with teachers when we were in IST or Tier 2 conversations. And then they also knew what to look for and knew what to ask questions with. I think those are huge things for us as administrators because we're not always getting everything that the teachers are getting. And so we want to talk intelligently with them, but at the same time, we want to trust them as the teacher in the classroom. So it kind of helped bridge the gap for them and their understanding. We try to ensure that every classroom has what they need in by implementing a program, but we also implemented an intervention part of that same program as well for our upper grades. And so in providing that PD and providing those coaching supports with our instructional coaches has really helped as well. One of the things we're working on now is little videos of modeling all the different components of the phonological awareness, so that teachers can like get on and look at a 1 to 2 minute video really quick and see, oh, that's how I do that. That's what that means. So we're just trying to do some wraparound supports for everyone. And then helping them to understand that fidelity of providing the instruction and then providing the resource or the same thing for the intervention. It's been a journey for us, but that our teachers have really, between what we have implemented as a county and then the letters reinforcing it and then providing the admin the training they need, is just this whole wraparound piece so that everybody is feeling that this is important and that this matters and that we're all in this because it's the right thing to do for our students. That was a lot throwing out at you at one time. Angela or Donna, does anyone have any questions?
Anna, thank you so much for sharing. I think just hearing from a district around, what you're really doing and what it was like is really helpful for other people to hear.
And it's so authentic, Anna, because you've helped build these structures within your district. And we've got already folks in the chat are asking for your videos, Anna. So yeah,
We just started that part.
yeah, and listen, that each district kind of needs to create within their own PSU LEA their own body of work that represents the people that live and work within the culture of that environment. So think about how you might in your own districts replicate what you've heard Anna speak to today so that you can create the structures that are your own in your district. It's not nearly as meaningful when you're doing the work in your own LEA, in your own district, then people have ownership. It's their work. So, Anna, we so appreciate your time today, and we shout out to Stokes County for everything you all are doing. You're leaders in this work, and we respect and appreciate your time today.
Thank you, and I appreciate you guys asking me to be part of this, and thank you for everyone for all the hard work you're doing.
Thank you, Anna. And we really appreciate this. So we are going to do a little bit of engagement. So I would like to use the chat box, but don't write anything in the chat box yet. Let's just talk first for a minute and then we'll do it. Okay, so in your chat box, we are going to do what's called a waterfall. And some of you might have done this before if you've done any sort of virtual webinars or trying to build some engagement. This is a lot like how you could do response cards in the classroom. So response cards in the classroom, you give everybody a whiteboard, you ask a question, kids all write down their answer, and then they lift it up over their head. Great strategy for engagement. So we are going to ask you to think of a word or phrase that describes the foundational skills of reading. You're going to put it in the chat box, but you're not going to hit enter. You're just going to type it. I'm going to give everybody about 10, 15 seconds to do that. And then when I say go, I want everybody to hit enter at the same time, and it's going to make the chat kind of like a big, huge waterfall and explode, and we'll get to see everybody's answers. Oh, they're coming in so fast. Okay, I've seen very important, essential, imperative, essential, framework, able to decode, non-negotiable, pivotal, critical, essential, fundamental, essential, decoding, very important. Yeah, so it really sounds like you all are thinking about how these foundational reading skills are necessary. They're not optional. I didn't see anyone say on an occasional basis or optional or not really needed. Or things we do if we don't have time or if we have extra time. These are the actual needed foundational basic skills that we need our students to have in order to learn to read. Daily, oh, I like that. Daily, that's a good one. So when we talked the last time, if you were with us last time, you saw our active implementation formula, which comes from the National Implementation Research Network. And we know that in order to get to improved literacy outcomes, we need 3 factors. We need an evidence-based practice, we need effective implementation, and we need the enabling context. And the evidence-based practice is really talking about what we're learning in letters and where we're going to dive into around oral language and phonological and phonemic awareness today. Effective implementation are all those supports that many of you as coaches and as district leaders are putting in place to help support your teachers to use that evidence-based practice in their classrooms. And the enabling context is really all about the environment, the teams, the ability to look at what we're doing and make improvements, and thinking about how do we put all those pieces together so that we can improve our student outcomes in literacy. So this section is going to start with our foundational skills, which are, we're going to talk today about oral language, phonological awareness, and phonemic awareness. Okay, so I know you've all seen Scarborough's reading group. If I could see your hands, I'd be like, who's seen this? And everybody would raise their hand, right? So our Scarborough's reading group is really where we can look at all of those necessary pieces that are required in order to get to that skilled reading. So today we're going to talk about oral language, which is part of the language comprehension strand, and phonological awareness, which is part of the word recognition piece. Another visual that we've created is really just pulling out those 5 essential components of literacy that were pulled from the National Reading Panel when they did their big research and evaluation back in 2000. And they identified that phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension were all the big 5 areas that we need for our students to actually learn to be able to read and comprehend what they're reading. But what we also know is that speaking and listening is central to that. It's the foundation of how we're going to get all of these other pieces together, is that oral language piece. So oral language is spoken language, and it includes speaking and listening. We need to really focus on oral language because they are the foundation to learning to read and write. Oral language starts when we're babies, and it develops through our toddler years, through preschool, through early elementary, And honestly, oral language evolves throughout our entire lives. If we think about our vocabularies and how we can learn a new word and start using it, that's all part of that oral language. Your early childhood teachers who are going through letters were able to read on page 27 that developing a solid foundation in oral language is essential for learning to read and write. It is not something that is good to do just for the sake of having some oral language, but it is essential. If you think about print and you think about the words that we're trying to read, if you don't have the oral language to even talk about them, you're not able to make those connections. So that reading is really necessary to have those oral language pieces. So what does that look like in the classroom? So if you happen to have a pre-K classroom in your school, if you happen to have a kindergarten classroom in your school, or many kindergarten classrooms in first grade, these are some things that we would want to see your teachers doing to support oral language development. So I'm going to they're all about talking. It's all about having children hear and experience and be part of and watch models of and interact with adults that are talking. So the different strategies you can look at, we're going to look at the talk more option. So when we think about talking more, I've noticed myself with my child sometimes when she was really little, I would tell her what I was doing as I was doing it. So I would actually talk about when I'm cooking eggs, I talk about, oh, I got the pan and put the spray on it. And that was talking about what I was doing. Well, I could also talk more to provide that adult language and those adult vocabulary words, and then kind of translate it in a child-directed speech. So then talk to her a little more about what the pan is, or what the cooking spray is, and give her actual child-friendly words to understand what's really happening. The more you're talking, the more the children are getting exposed to and interacting with language, and that's really what we want to happen. And then another really great one for recast is when the student has said something and she would, when she was really little, and she'd say, more milk. And then I would say, okay, I would like more milk. And I would say it with the whole sentence so that she could hear the full model of how to say it in an actual sentence. Another great opportunity to develop oral language is with interactive read-alouds. And in interactive read-alouds, we're really going to read with our students and not to our students. Sometimes when we read a story to students and we're just reading the words on the page and we're going from page to page, we're reading to them because we're not having them interact with the story other than just listening. But when we do an interactive read-aloud, we want to read with our students. We want to ask them questions as we're reading the story. We want to talk about those vocabulary words and give them a child-friendly definition. We want to make connections to things that the children have experienced and your students have experienced, so they can see how this relates to what they're reading in the story. And when we do our interactive read-alouds, we want to be able to plan these out ahead of time and think about what are we going to do before we read the story to get the kids thinking about the content. What are we going to ask during the story, those questions that we want to have for them? And then how do we follow up after we've read? Are we going to read the book again? Are we going to talk about the book in one of our centers? Are we going to have some experiences that the kids can relate to after the story that brings it back to what they read? So in this video, we are going to watch a quick, very short example of this teacher providing an interactive read aloud and really just talking with her students.
Oh my goodness, he's noticed this track in this book. Roberto is talking. Amy answers him. I'm thinking that if you're talking at the end of the day saying good night, that means what?
It's probably nighttime.
It's nighttime.
It's bedtime.
It's bedtime. And look, they all live where? In the same apartment building. Now let me reread, and I want you to think about your thinking as I read. As it grew darker, the city got quieter. Bedtime, Roberto. Who's doing the talking?
Mama.
Mama's doing the talking. Bedtime, Roberto. Bedtime for you too. Other mothers called. Good night, Amy.
All right, so did you see class, she wasn't just reading the story and going from page to page. She was really getting her students to interact, and she's asking questions and getting them to think about what was happening in the story. So hopefully these are some of the, when you do your observations of read aloud, you're seeing similar things in your classrooms as well. Okay, so we're going to move from oral language, which remember are those foundational pieces that need to be there. We're going to develop them all through early childhood into elementary years and really build those oral language skills. And we're going to talk some about phonological and phonemic awareness. But let's start with another poll. And I would like you to think about how many phonemes are in the English language. Now you have an option here, so we'll be able to see everybody's responses. If we have 26 letters in the alphabet, how many phonemes are in the English language? Okay, so here we are. We've got 50% said 44, which is the correct answer. Candace, if you want to hit, da, 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 da. We have 44 phonemes in the English language. And when we think about the 26 letters and having 44 phonemes, you know, that is some of the reasons why it's really important to work with our students on all these different sounds and the unique sounds that the letters make, so that as we get to reading these words in books, they make more sense. Let's continue talking a bit more about phonological awareness and how we can understand the difference between these words like phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. When we think about phonological awareness, sometimes you've heard of it referred to as an umbrella term. That means because it really covers a lot of different skills. So our definition that we think of for phonological awareness is that it's a broad skill that includes manipulating parts such as words, syllables, onsets and rhymes, and sounds. This is the bigger term. And so we think about how we're looking at sound chunks that are moving from more simple to complex. So our rhymes are easier for kids to hear. They're easier for them to be able to pull out words that end the same. Then we go to alliteration, which is really thinking about the first sound of the word. So if I said ball, and I said bug, and I said top, which words have the same sound? The alliteration, that's that ball, bug, the b sound. Sentence segmentation is being able to hear a sentence and pull out all the individual words. So can kids actually pull out that in my sentence of I had a sandwich for lunch, each individual word? I had a sandwich for lunch. And then syllables, being able to count out the syllables in the word, and onset and rhyme. We'll talk a little bit more about onsets and rhymes, but that's the first part leading up to the vowel and the rest of the word. And then our phonemes, which are those individual sounds. Phoneme is the smallest unit of sound. So some activities that you might actually see in your classroom, we would see a lot of these in kindergarten and first grade, would be thinking about splitting sentences into words like I just modeled, that being able to say the sentences, that was segmenting, pulling the sentences apart. And then hearing a sentence and blending it together. So I see the cat, and then the kids say the whole sentence together. And then same thing with syllables. We can blend the syllables or we can segment the syllables. It's really that ability to put them together and take them apart that we're trying to work on with our students in phonological awareness instruction. So then your onset and rhyme, that's where we're going to take the first part of the word and then up to the vowel and the rest of the vowel. So the word is hat is the onset, at is the rhyme. And so can we pull those two apart? If the word was split, spool is the first part, it is the rhyme. So being able to pull those two apart. And then being able to segment words into phonemes and blend phonemes into words. So being able to say, at, what's the word? Mat. Or being able to say, if I say the word you put it together, top. And then pulling them apart. What are the sounds in top? T, being able to segment them. So let's watch a little video of this where we can see a little girl. She's going to work with a interventionist who happens to be a very well-known researcher and worker in literacy And if you were in any of our webinars previously, you might recognize her. If not, I'll cue you in at the end. But I want you to watch how they're working together and if they're using letters or what are they using in place of letters as they're doing some of these sounds together.
Autumn, I'm going to give you two parts of a word and you're going to tell me what the word is. Watch this. Table. What's the word? Ball. You got it. Let's try this one. Computer.
Computer.
You're so good, I can't even teach you that. You already know syllables. Autumn was a master at that. She could do that beautifully. The next level is onset rhyme. And that means, can you take the first part of the word, everything before the vowel sound, and then take the vowel sound and everything after, and put those together and make a word? So that would be alt. What's the word? All right, let's talk about first sounds. This is a bat.
B, b,
B is the first sound. This is a ball.
b, b.
This is hat. This is mouse.
Mm,
House. Mop.
mm.
Ms. Farrell is making sure that Autumn can isolate the first sound in a word, what's called the onset. If Autumn can do that consistently, then she's ready to start blending onset and rhyme.
Cake. All right. We are now going to put together two parts of a word again. I'm going to see if you can tell me what it is.
Syllable.
We just did syllables. We're going to do something called onset rhyme right now. Watch this. This is un. What's this? What's this? What happens if I put it together?
Sun.
Let's try this one.
Mm,
Ache.
eight.
What is it when I put it together?
Eight.
Ache is this part. Watch me. What's this part?
Mm, eight.
This is ache. Can you say
Ache.
ache?
Eight.
You point to each one.
Eight. Eight.
This part's ache. This part is ache. Watch this. Ache.
For a lot of children, blending onset and rhyme is much harder than blending syllables. And that makes sense, says Ms. Farrell.
All right, sorry. That video with Autumn and Linda Farrell is a really excellent video. And so we'll make sure that it's on the Padlet if it's not already. And anybody that wants to watch it, it's about 12 minutes long. The process that she goes through to help Autumn be able to hear those onset and rhymes, she really struggles with that as the video goes on. And so she works with her to really pull those sounds apart, because when you have a single syllable word, you're not used to breaking those apart. And whereas multi-syllable words and just counting syllables, there's a rhythm to it where you can kind of feel those pieces coming together. But onset and rhyme can be a little more difficult for students. And so watching her go through that with Autumn is a really great video to watch, but it's a little long for a webinar. And we also wanted to share, so that's looking at a one-on-one activity and thinking about, well, how do I do this with larger groups of students? What would this look like in a classroom if I were to walk into a classroom? So we can still have our students doing phonological awareness and phonemic awareness activities in the classroom whole group, because all of our students can do what's called choral responding. So the teacher might ask a question and all of the students are going to answer. And that is a great strategy. Active student responding is evidence-based practice around building engagement for students, and choral responding is one of those ways to do that. So in this video, we're going to pay attention to how she has her students all chorally respond and answer together in some of these skills where she's moving from bigger chunks of sounds to more discrete sounds.
Words, and then I want you to tell me the first sound you hear. Ready? Pick page. What sound do you hear? Good job. Next one. Walk, wall. What do you hear? Good. Red, rip. What do you hear? Good. Silly, send. What do you hear? Tell, teeth. What do you hear? Good job on that T sound. Voice, vet. What do you hear? Good job, Idris. Quilt, quail. What do you hear? Well, good, my friends in the back, help us out. Yes, yellow. There we go. What do you hear? Yeah. Good. Zoom, zap. What do you hear? Last one. Bet, bag. What do you hear? Awesome job. Kiss your brain. Done. Eyes up here. Ready? Let me see you up top for 1,000. Here we go. Remember, I chop, then you chop, then we slide it back together, and you tell me how many chops you did. Okay? Ready? Famous. Famous. Good job. How many? 2. Good job. Ready? Paper. How many? 2. Next one. Tiger.
So in that video, you can see how she's really looking at the more discrete skill where she was pulling out the first sound. What was that first sound? That's an alliteration skill. And then she moved into syllable counting. But all the kids were engaged. They were all answering. So it wasn't just something that she had to do small group with everybody, but all the kids were participating and able to do that. And if she heard the students make an error, she could then correct it and have them all practice again. Okay, so we're going to move from phonological awareness, which is that bigger umbrella term, to phonemic awareness. So where does that actually fit in? If we think about phonological awareness, we want to look at phonemic awareness as the smallest unit of sound, really being able to manipulate those sounds. So phonemic awareness, the definition is the ability to hear, identify, and manipulate individual sounds or phonemes. That's why it's in the phoneme level. We know that phonological awareness and phonemic awareness are really important because they are needed for more than just, when we learn to read, we can't just look at the words. We also have to have the sounds. We have to have those language skills more than just even being able to see those letters. And it's the combination of connecting the sounds to the letters that helps engage the learning to read. We also know that students who struggle with word recognition sometimes have actual skill deficits in phonemic awareness. So we need to help them be able to pull those sounds apart because they're missing those pieces. There is research to show that explicit and systematic instruction in phonemic awareness can help prevent and improve reading difficulties. But really, when we think about all of the oral language pieces we talked about earlier, which is that speaking and listening, we also want to think about phonological awareness as those sounds. Can we really hear and understand those sounds? Because we need to have those skills in order to put the letters and the pieces to something to actually decode words. Somebody said phonological awareness or phonemic awareness is like having parking spots so that we can assign cars to those parking spots. And the cars are the letters. So once we have those letters, we can assign them to those parking spots. I did not come up with that, but that was a really great analogy, and I wanted to share that one. So what would we see in the classroom level if we are looking and doing observations and you're coaching and supporting teachers with phonemic awareness instruction? We would see a lot of blending, segmenting, and being able to do some sound identification and manipulating those sounds. So the blending, if I'm going to blend a word, I might say smell, say the word, and the kid blends all those sounds together to say smell. Segmenting is pulling those sounds apart. What are the sounds in tricky? T, r, I, e, and then being able to manipulate sounds. And if you can tell me the first sound in the word or the last sound in the word or the middle sound in the word. And just as for leaders, as you are a leader in the school, you might see these activities happening and there are no letters, that you're watching the students do it with, they're listening to those sounds. They might have felt squares as Ms. Farrell did with Autumn, that they're just moving around, or maybe some tokens, that type of thing. So one phoneme segmentation activity would be a thing with Alconin boxes. So I might say something like, can you segment the sounds in the word sheep? And now my student will go shh and put the block E, and have a sound for each, a block for each of these sounds, and then they can manipulate those around. Then when we get into a little more advanced phonemic awareness instruction, we're going to start doing a little more with our sounds. We're not just pulling them apart and putting them together, but we might actually substitute the word. So if I had bat and I changed the b to r, what's my new word? Rat. And then we can manipulate sounds that way. So these are other activities that you might see in your classrooms as well that are really supporting phonemic awareness. We're going to watch this video where you can actually see one round of a teacher working with a couple students, and they're working on a phonemic awareness skill in a small group.
And doing.
Sitting.
Sit. Say sit.
Sit.
Okay, now stretch out the sounds you hear in sit. First with your words. Let me hear.
Sit.
Okay, now use your counters.
So that was just a really quick video of how you can do that together in a small group, and your students can actually manipulate those sounds. And you can do them over and over again so they get lots of practice on those sounds. We have a handout that's going to put in the chat box now, and it's on the levels of phonological awareness. And this comes from the Letters Volume 1, Unit 2. And we don't expect our students to have the same skills as they would when they're in preschool as they do when they're 9. And so you can see over the progression of how these skills develop over time. So as you're walking in your classrooms, be looking at what those levels are that you're going to go see so that you know that they are appropriate for the students. But then also, if you have students who are struggling, you can think about help support the teacher with those skills that they might be missing that they would need to work on. How do we know what skills they're missing? What a great question. Well, one type of assessment we have is the Phonological Awareness Screening Test. And we could use this for students who, let's say you've already given them some support in supplemental instruction, you followed your district standard treatment protocol, and you've provided them some support in phonemic awareness, but they're still struggling. We want to see if they need more intensive support. We could do the PAST. And this tells you specifically what skills your student has mastered, areas that they have done automatically, and then things that we need to help them work on and grow with. And so it's more of a diagnostic to give you that information to help design your instruction. And as a leader, when you're walking through your schools or you're doing your walkthroughs, you're doing your coaching, there's some questions that you can think about as to how are we supporting phonemic awareness and phonological awareness in our school day. These questions are in your handout as a separate handout, so you could spend a few minutes with your colleagues either later today or find some time maybe tomorrow to talk through, are these happening? Do we have explicit systematic phonemic awareness in our daily instructional routine? It doesn't need to be a 45-minute block. It could be just 10-15 minutes a day where they're really working on the segmenting and blending sounds and putting those things together. But really talking through these questions to think about how are we ensuring that phonemic awareness is addressed in our school? And if you're a district leader, these same kind of questions, but looking at it at the district level, how are we supporting our schools to have this time available for our students? When you do your walkthroughs, we've provided a reflection tool for phonological awareness instruction. This is actually part of the resources that are found in the Letters PLC district support document. We'll talk about that in the next section, but this really gives you an idea of some activities that you could expect to happen. So in the column on the very left, it names different types of phonological awareness routines or actions that you would see. We would not expect all of them to happen at once. So it's okay if you're only seeing 1 or 2 pieces or even 3 pieces when you're doing your walkthrough. Then you can mark whether it's fully present, partially, or not yet. Then in the third column, our explicit instruction column, this is showing how we actually want to teach this. We want to model it. We want to have students actively engage in it. And then we want to give students the opportunity for independent practice. So looking at whether or not these pieces are there would then be recorded in that fourth column for explicit instruction being fully present, partially, or not yet. This can also be used for teachers as a reflection for their own practice and things that they can help make sure that they're using the skills that we know will help support phonological awareness. So to round out this section, we wanted to share a video from our, we did a teacher panel back in the spring, or well, February, this past year. And one of the teachers talked about how he used the past in his third grade classroom and really the importance of that, what he realized about phonological and phonemic awareness.
With the Bridge to Practice activities, there are several different types of activities. Some of those activities require that you reflect on kind of your past teaching experiences, while other activities have you sit down and complete activities with your students. These activities have helped me kind of identify some of the weaknesses that some of my struggling readers are having. And they've allowed me to dive a little deeper into some of the assessments and things that I have been using in the classroom, such as M-Class. And it's helped me to kind of go a little bit further to kind of see where my students' weaknesses are at. In addition to that, I will say that I have just finished up with Unit 2, and Unit 2 had a Bridge to Practice activity that involved using the PAST assessment, which is basically a phonological awareness screening test. And after doing this assessment with my case study students, I actually decided to go a step further and do this assessment with some of my other students in the class. And I have found that some of my students that I made the assumption were fluent readers actually still have some deficits with some phonological awareness skills. So I will say that the Bridge to Practice has been eye-opening for me.
And so, we wanted to kind of come back together to just say how we can use phonological awareness and phonemic awareness to help support students, not just in kindergarten and first grade, but even our students who we think might have already be fluent readers will benefit from strengthening those phonemic awareness skills so that as they grow and as they go into higher grades, they're able to make some of those bigger connections between the sounds and the actual letters, because it's all connected. We can't just rely fully on phonemic awareness. We need to connect that with the phonics and with the letters so that we're actually providing the full decoding instruction. But if we're missing the sounds, it's very hard for our students to connect them to the letters. So it's all those pieces together. Okay, enough talking from me. Let's do some polls. We are going to have a little time where you're going to get to think about what we just talked about, everything we learned, and I want you to tell me if what I'm asking is phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, or oral language. So go back to the poll. Remember where that's found on the side. It should be under polling. We're going to run our first poll, and I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to do this. Okay, here we go. What is the ability to hear, identify, and manipulate individual sounds? Is it phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, or oral language? Or none of the above? I'll give you a hint. It is not D. It will never be D. It'll only be 3 options. Okay, here we go. What is the answer? The answer is phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is the ability to hear, identify, and manipulate those individual sounds. Great job. Most of you said phonemic awareness. Nicely done. All right. Next question, next poll. What is spoken language that includes speaking and listening? What do we call spoken language that includes speaking and listening? I think we won't even need as much time on this one. What's the answer? Aha, oral language. How many of you figured that out? Here we go on the next one. What is a broad set of skills that includes manipulating parts such as words, syllables, and onset and rhymes? Is it phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, or oral language? Bum, bum, bum. Here we go. Phonological awareness. And what did we all say? We said phonological awareness. Excellent. Very good. Yes. Remember, this is the broad set of skills where we're not just talking about phonemes, but all of the pieces. It is including phonemic awareness. It's part of phonological awareness, but it's that broader skill. Okay, now we're going to give a scenario, and you have to figure out which practice this is addressing. So, which skill is addressed when the student tells the teacher what is happening in the picture they drew. Student draws a picture, teacher says, "Tell me about your picture." And then the student tells a whole entire story about the picture, and the teacher listens. Oral language, very good. And let's see what we said. Oral language. Excellent job, everybody. Yes. All right, 2 more questions. Here's our next one. Which skill is addressed when the teacher says the word cat and has the students change the sound k to s and say the new word? So we have cat, take the k and change it to s. And now what's the new word? The new word is sat. Which skill are we working on when we're doing activities like that? Okay, the answer is phonemic awareness. Very good. How did we do on our poll? Not bad, not bad. So everybody thought phonemic awareness, and then we had a couple thinking of that phonological awareness. And technically, you could say, because phonemic awareness is part of phonological awareness, you could argue that point. But we were really looking at that very specific skill, so we'll go with phonemic awareness. And the last one, which skill is addressed when a teacher asks students to tap out the syllables in a word? Are we looking at phonological awareness? Are we looking at phonemic awareness? Oral language as your options. And the answer is here, phonological awareness. Very good. Candace is on it with these slides. Yes, the answer is phonological awareness, and majority of you said phonological awareness. Very, very nicely done. So remember, if we're pulling apart those syllables, we're talking about those bigger chunks of sound and not just those discrete phonemes. So we're moving into our next section. We're going to do these last 2 sections the rest of the day today. And we're going to talk some about effective implementation. So really, where does phonemic awareness fit into all of the other pieces that we're doing in our work in terms of supporting teachers and trainings and PLCs and data and kind of making those connections? Our first section is on professional development. And I don't know if you can already guess, it's kind of obvious, but letters. Yes, letters is our professional development that's being provided to teachers on phonological and phonemic awareness. So our phonemic awareness is found in Unit 2, where they go really deep, a lot deeper into the speech sounds of English. And our oral language is in Volume 2, Unit 5, where the whole volume starts off with, let's talk about oral language and let's really think about the words and speaking and listening and all of those skills. Okay, now what is the connection to data? So are we collecting data? Are we doing anything in terms of data for our students in oral language or phonemic awareness? So go ahead and look at the poll. And which assessments in M-Class measure phonemic awareness and oral language? We have maze and oral language. B is oral language and phoneme segmentation fluency. C is phoneme segmentation fluency and nonsense word fluency. And D, nonsense word fluency and oral language. Go ahead and select your answer. Okay, and the answer is oral language and phoneme segmentation fluency. That was a little bit harder, wasn't it? Okay, so let's go to the next slide and we'll talk about those 2 assessments. So phoneme segmentation fluency is one of the DIBELS M-Class measures where we're really looking at a student's ability to hear a word and pull the sounds apart. So the administrator says, I will say a word, you tell me the sounds in the word. They say he, and the kid goes E and pulls apart those sounds for every word that they're provided in that. And we're seeing how many sounds are they able to do within that minute. And then in oral language, we're looking at the administrator says a sentence, and then the student is repeating exactly what the teacher says. And so are they hearing every single word and not swapping out? So that middle sentence, the dog ran after the cat. They're not saying the dog ran after a cat, that they're hearing the and repeating that in the same way. So hearing and being able to repeat those, that's oral language. And the other one that we didn't mention, but just tossing in there, is really vocabulary. Vocabulary also assesses those oral language skills. Okay, so when we think about how all of this comes together, and you all as coaches, as administrators, how are you supporting these pieces together? The teacher receives professional development through letters. That's that first block that we're seeing here. And then a lot of the work that you're doing is in those PLCs, the time that you have together with your teachers where you're talking through the bridge to practice, you're talking through the content they're learning and connecting it to their daily instruction in the classroom. And then that gradual release cycle really is that individual support that you're providing to teachers where you're helping them make changes in the classroom instruction where you're going in and doing observations, or you're modeling, you're talking with them and debriefing on how it went and giving teachers a chance to practice before more support's provided. So this whole process is really trying to move from gotcha to support you, making it go away from feeling evaluative to really we're all in this together. So we're going to talk about the district PLC support document, which is what you would do in that PLC time. And this was created out of the letters professional development to give coaches something to actually start with. So when they're leading their PLCs, they have something to go from. So in this, you'll see it says Unit 1, PLC sessions 1 through 4. So each of these sections covers 4 sessions in letters. So the thought was you would be able to do this once a month with your teachers and be able to keep up with those sessions that they're working through. The first section is the overview of learning. So this really talks about what they learned, what they talked about, what they read about, what they were doing in those 4 sessions. It gives the chance for you as a facilitator or coach or leader to hear if teachers have some questions that are still unresolved that they need to talk through. The next part is the bridge to practice. This is a really important piece of letters. The bridge to practice gives the teachers a chance to actually take what they're learning in letters and then practice it without there being any pressure around doing this in front of an entire class. And the teachers can pick kids that are struggling with those areas. They can pick kids that they know won't have any behavior issues, so they can really just focus on the teaching and the skills to help support those areas. And then in your PLC times, you can come together and talk about how they're going. The last section is the application and coaching for all. And this really takes it a step further and provides you as a coach some suggestions on how you can support teachers to practice these together during your PLCs before they go out and do them with their students. So if they're said, hey, we really want to spend time with segmenting sounds and using those Elkonin boxes. So then that's something during your PLC time you can practice together as teachers can teach each other and kind of get that feedback before trying to do it with students. So when you're thinking about your PLC, we think of this as really, it's one big choice board. So you might not have 90 minutes to do a full big PLC. You might have 30 minutes. So you can say, okay, I really want to take this bridge to practice from Unit 3, sessions 1 through 4. We're going to focus real deep on how did it go in that bridge to practice. Or maybe we want to focus on coaching. Maybe we want to take the overview of learning and talk about it at a staff meeting. But it's really something that you can kind of take these pieces and embed them in ways that are really supporting you and your teachers at your schools. So let's do a quick model and a quick practice of what this might actually look like. And we're going to just focus on the application and coaching for all piece of our PLC. So there's 4 steps when you think about how we're going to plan for our PLC. First, we want to plan out what we're going to do. So there's a planning document that's going to be added to the chat box where you can actually take this and say, okay, I'm going to look at this PLC document. I'm going to plan out what I'm going to do with my teachers so that I can practice and be ready, so that I feel confident in front of my teachers to model this and interact with them on this. That's the first step. Then the second step is to model. Now I'm going to model this together with my teachers. We're going to practice it. This third step is teachers are going to practice with each other. So first, during the model, they're going to practice with you, but then we want to give them time to practice with each other and get feedback from each other as teachers. And then the last step is to give teachers a moment to reflect. Where am I going to do this? Grab a sticky note and write down, I'm going to do this activity with my small group on Thursday. And that's just a quick reflection so that the teacher remembers later to do it with her small group on Thursday. So let's start with the planning. You have the planning document, and in the planning document link, you can actually see I wrote out what this would look like. So the first page is blank, but the second page should have a plan actually written out. And you can see it's not very long, just some notes and ideas and thoughts about how we're going to do this. The second part is modeling. Now this can happen. We have videos embedded in the PLC document for you. If you don't feel comfortable modeling these yourself, you can use these videos. And then the videos would be the model of the coach to the teachers so that the teachers are watching what other teachers would see. And then they would get to practice. So we're going to have our model come from this great video from the Rollins Center. and she's going to model the sound. So in our PLC today, we want to have a model of how we actually say the phonemes. So we're going to watch this for a few minutes.
Hi, I'm Yvette, a facilitator at the Rollins Center for Language and Literacy. You probably already know the English language has very distinct sounds, or phonemes, that we combine in different ways to make words. In this video, we are going to demonstrate how to pronounce each of the individual phonemes. Often, we accidentally add an extra or schwa sound to the end of consonants. If students hear this and imitate it, it may then be reflected in later reading and writing tasks. To prevent this, it is important to produce only the phoneme itself without any additional sounds. An example of this is the sound p. Sometimes when teachers are trying to emphasize or isolate a phoneme, they say p. Instead, focus on producing just the phoneme itself. We'll start with the consonant phonemes. You'll see the associated letter or letter combination, also known as a grapheme, on the screen as I say the sound. Ready? Here we go. B as in banana. D as in dinosaur. As in fish. G as in guitar. As in hand. J as in jelly. As in car.
So this is our model, and we would model this. We would go through the whole video, and then I might stop and pause and have your teachers say those sounds too, and go to the next one and pause and kind of go back and forth and have some of that interaction. And then we would move to the practice time. So now I would say, okay, now with your teacher, partner up, and you're going to model saying the sounds as if you're teaching these sounds to your students. B as in ball. P as in, and we're making sure we're not saying that schwa sound, but we're and really just focusing on that sound. Doing that practice time, and then giving your teachers a chance to actually reflect and say, okay, really, where am I going to do this? How is this going to happen for my kids? I want to make sure that I'm embedding this and ensuring that you have given them a little bit of time to do that right there during the PLC will help make that connection a little stronger going into their classrooms. So when you're thinking about how we're putting all of this together and you're looking at your PLCs, I hope you take some time to go through that PLC document if you haven't already, and really read through and check out those links to see how you can put them into the PLC. Then talk with your individual teachers about some specific routines and skills that they would like to practice during that gradual release cycle where you're going in the classroom and providing some of that extra support with modeling or co-teaching, or even observing and having conversations with them afterwards. All right, we are now moving into the enabling context portion, and I am going to turn this over to my colleague, Donna, and let her take it from here.
Thanks, Angela. Appreciate that. So Angela's just done a magnificent job of helping us understand what it is to create that effective implementation, the ability to have the professional development that's required. You also heard Anna McGee speak to having that coaching as part of an effective implementation process. And Angela just walked us through an example of how we can, within a PLC, embed practice, focusing on the bridge to practice as well. That's part of our professional learning, which is, of course, in this instance, letters. And we're going to talk about another component of this active implementation formula. In the same way that the science of reading has a battery of science behind it for how we learn to read and how we instruct reading, similarly, implementation science helps us understand what is the best practice or the most effective practice for creating conditions that allow that evidence-based practice, science of reading, to translate into the way we do things in our classrooms to support students as learners. And part of that enabling context is that team, creating a team. So we talked about this a bit last time. As you're building the conditions to make this work come to life in your districts and in your schools, thinking about having a team, a district level team that supports the work. They're looking at that literacy intervention plan and how that functions to enable the work to occur. and having an improvement cycle. So how are we gathering information about how are things working? Even within the PLCs, as part of that effective implementation component of the active implementation formula, within those PLCs, you're gathering information about what teachers may need, resources they may need, things that need to occur to enable them to get to that final desired outcome, which is, of course, improved literacy. So we're going to kind of dig a little deeper and talk somewhat about an improvement cycle and master schedules. And part of that came out of, as Angela and I were preparing for this presentation, I shared a story of my days gone by when I was a school principal. And my last stop as a school principal, had different schools, but the last school where I was a principal, we had a school-wide literacy block. Everyone in the building began their literacy instruction, same 120 minutes every day that we were at school, first thing in the morning. Well, as we were observing children coming in tardy, they were missing part of their instructional block in literacy. Well, part of the improvement cycle was we were getting feedback, gathering information, what's occurring, why is this happening, why are we getting so many students who are coming to school tardy and missing part of that instruction, was related to families who drove students to school, and they had older children who were at the middle school just down the street. And the parents, because of the start time for middle school, were first dropping their middle schoolers off, getting them to school on time, which resulted in the elementary child, or children in the car, getting to school tardy and missing part of our instructional block. Well, for that year, what we were able to do is simply adjust our schedule. So we had to adjust the literacy start time for our literacy instruction, 120 minutes, school-wide, everybody having literacy instruction at the same time every day. We adjusted it, but what we were able to do, I couldn't make a decision as a building principal to change the start time of our school day, nor could the middle school principal. But what we did is we collaborated. We went to leadership at the district level because they could make that adjustment. And of course, it was a procedure. They had to get approval, board approval and whatnot. But we were able to adjust schedules at each of our schools to ensure that we didn't hit that barrier. That's an example of an improvement cycle. So getting that information, having ways to gather the information and making decisions based on that information that helps improve, implementation, that's creating an enabling context. So that's just a real world example. When I shared that with Angela, like, we're going to share that. So how does the master schedule factor into all of this? I'm really going to highly encourage everyone who's on this in this webinar, whether you're at district level. If I were a district level leader, I would make sure that I was reviewing every master schedule for every school in my district, even if we have really large districts and we had to parse that out. And within my building, as a building leader, ensuring that I have a team that looks at the master schedule and makes assessments about how effective is this schedule. And sometimes, you all have done this like me. You have to get into the year, look at the master schedule, think about what's working, and you might have to make tweaks and adjustments along the way. So thinking about what are some of the considerations that happen whenever you're building out a master schedule. Formerly, when I was in the role as a school principal, we had a team of folks who worked on the master schedule. It was voluntary. Nobody got voluntold to do this work. It was folks that were interested in building out a master schedule, and they really created a schedule that was useful for everyone. Part of that process was, again, it was created by a team. That's part of an enabling context. Creating that teamwork that allows them to build a schedule, and focused on having that 120 minutes every day that's uninterrupted. Students weren't pulled from their core literacy instruction, so we had no pullouts during that time. If there were itinerant folk who supported students, we pushed in during that core instruction, and students were getting on grade level instruction, differentiated, of course, based on their needs. But it was very intentional about how we approached that. So just reflecting on that master schedule, if you will. The next slide is kind of give you an example of some ways that, and this is just an example. This is, we're not telling you how to build out your schedule, but certainly giving you an opportunity to look at a sample of core literacy components and what those time frames should look like within a classroom. We know that for kindergarten students, we want to ensure that we're making sure that they have adequate time for phonemic awareness, phonological awareness that we've just talked about with Angela, and phonics. So you can see here, this is a fairly significant portion of their instructional block during their literacy time. So looking at that 30 and 15 minutes, and that's going to look differently across, and you'll see also the kinds of skills that teachers would be practicing with students. And then certainly third, fourth, and fifth grade students, still that work is occurring across those classrooms. We're still doing that kind of work. It's more advanced phonics, kind of phonemic awareness and phonological awareness skills, but still we're practicing those skills. So those are the kinds of things that you want to look at. These samples are here for you to reflect on. One other consideration, this was pulled from a school where I worked, and again, there was a team that built out our schedule. We tried to make sure that within that school day and that school week, that every teacher as a grade level team had the ability to sit with their teammates and plan. We talked about our plans. They planned as a team. And that was uninterrupted planning time, one time a week on grade level. So they had 90 minutes. We had back-to-back resources. So we'd plan art and music back-to-back for a teacher, and those teams would sit and discuss their lessons, talk about questioning skills, look at student work. This is where they're working on that bridge to practice work with our letters training. They're going to have that time, and the example that Angela just gave within a PLC, to take the time to look at that phoneme video from the Rollins Center. And really, are we articulating sounds correctly? Those kinds of things occur during that PLC block, but how are you being intentional about providing that time in your schedule? Additionally, within our staff, we tried to not only have back-to-back planning where there was horizontal planning, we also had vertical planning. So within the building, instead of organizing all of the third grade teachers on one area, or all the fourth grade teachers and all the fifth grade teachers, we were organized within the building within what we called vertical teams. And a child could move along a vertical team based on their skill set and the way that they were able to, their performance. So for example, if I began with a vertical team, and each vertical team, they named themselves, they had their own names, but I would stay as a student within that vertical team for my tenure at the school. So they became a cohort of students who moved within a team of teachers vertically, and it created consistency and continuity. Teachers got to know the children, and it really does create a family kind of atmosphere that was really effective for our school. And I'm not telling you what to do. Everybody's got to do what works for them. But I would suggest to you this, as you're building schedules and reflecting on schedules, and just because we're almost October, aren't we, y'all? Believe it or not, here we are. But even in October, it's not too late to go back, talk to a team, bring a team together. It could be your literacy team at your school level, and talk about, is our schedule meeting the needs that we have for our students? Is our schedule effective? Are there tweaks we need to make within our schedule? But vertical team planning was critically important to us as well. So within a vertical team, teachers would look at how those content standards progressed and spiraled across the grade spans. And it was just really rich discourse that enabled us to be effective as a school. So that's just one example, and I'm sure you all have many others. So you all looked at this tool we're going to look at right now, and it's just been dropped in the chat by Kelly. Thank you, Kelly. It's the Administrator's Literacy Framework, ALF for short. We took a look at this last time, and last time we looked at the leadership component. And when we talked about this in session 1, and for those of you who weren't able to attend session 1, all of the resources and the recorded webinar is included there on the Padlet that's been given to you. So if you want to go back, you can hear how we took a look at the leadership component on this ALF. This comes right out of the letters training for admins. And you heard Anna say that they felt like they wanted to supplement the admin training that was provided by Letters. So Anna just reached out to her regional consultants, and those regional consultants, Cam and Mary, were able to provide additional support for principals within that district, Stokes County. This is a resource that you might want to use either district-wide. I was with a group of superintendents recently, and one of the superintendents asked me, Donna, is this a tool that I would want to unpack with all of my administrators in the district? 100%. That was my answer, 100%. And already that superintendent's given it to the district leader, and she's reached out to me. So we're creating those structures for how to support. This is a rubric, and this rubric allows you with a team to reflect on where you are and how you're doing with the regard to implementation and literacy effective practices. So here's the framework. We're going to give you a few minutes to work in this. If you've never seen it before, you might want to scan it. But we want you to go down to the part that says universal instruction, because within this rubric, it speaks to master scheduling. It speaks to how are you prioritizing that literacy instruction. So take a few minutes. We're going to give you 5, may cut it a little bit short, but open the ALF, it's in the chat. Go to the part that says universal instruction, take a look at it, and think about how you can do this back at your own schools, please, or your districts. So hopefully you'll see how this ALF, this is a really useful tool that you can take back. Again, we're talking about creating those frameworks for implementation that help us get traction with this work. So when you think about the enabling context, part of that is, how do you use a team to reflect on the tool you just took a quick glance at with the universal instruction portion, and within your school or district with a literacy team, look at that tool. Our next activity is simply to waterfall again. You're going to go into your chat and just type in, when are you going to get to an opportunity to meet with a team to talk about the universal instruction portion of the ALF? Is it next week? Maybe it's tomorrow. Or maybe it's October 3rd. So within the chat, just give us feedback. When do you think you can get to using this tool with your teams? I love it. Somebody's going to the sit with it. Thanks, Donna. So next week, Thursday, we're forming our team. Yes, I'm excited. I've got folks. That's really, if you're going to get this work done, it's a team approach, district-wide and building-wide. And if you have a linked teaming structure from the building level, and you're building that capacity at the district level, and you have us as leadership, as support to leadership folk. We support you, just like the example that Anna gave today, how she used her regional consultants to provide support for the leadership team. That's how we're going to get this to move and get traction across the entire state of North Carolina. SIT meeting on the 4th. Tracy, thank you for that. All right, so everybody's kind of got a thought about how we can use this tool. Please continue to do that. So as you're thinking about next steps with your team, and just, thinking about your note catcher, going back to that, are there things that you need to reflect on that would help you with PLC support, coaching, using the ALF, looking at master schedules, and what we call quick wins? So in the world of implementation science, quick wins are those things that we can very readily put into place to get about improvement. So we know that part of an enabling context is that improvement cycle. So maybe within the ALF, as you reflect with a team, you and your team identify something that you could do very quickly that's going to increase impact. And that's what you want to do, looking for those quick wins. So we want to encourage you to think about NC Papa that's coming up. If you've not heard about NC Papa, we've put a link there in the chat as well. Thank you for that, Kelly, that you can click on and register. We'll be doing a much more deep approach of looking at this work with NC Papa coming up. So if you want to come and join us, we'd love to have you. So please join us in NC Papa if you're available. And on the next slide, we're going to just simply remind you that we're capturing all of the links. So if there's anything you saw today and you said, I'd like to have that link, I'd like to go back and share it, it's all available on the Padlet. So if you'll save this link, if it were me, when I clicked on that Padlet, I would save that link. I would share it with friends. I would help others who maybe need some of these resources get access to it. Again, I had a meeting recently with superintendents, and I made sure that every superintendent in the room had access to this Padlet. And we're going to build it out as we move through. So today you received a lot of new information about phonemic awareness and oral language. You're going to continue to get information on this Padlet that will be useful to you. All right, we're going to remind you what we talked about today. There it is. See the arrows and where we're headed next. Next time, if you'll look at that next slide, you're going to get a deep dive into all things phonics. So November 10th, 2022, please be reminded that you must register for each of these sessions. If you register for one, you're not registered for all. So please go in and make sure you're registered for the next one. And the final thing is just a great big thank you to all of you from all of us. We are your early education consultants at NCDPI, and we're here for you. Reach out if there's anything that we can possibly do to be of support to you. Thanks again.